This is truthfully one of those moments where I barely know what to say. This is a very important day here in the Commonwealth of Mass. Today, I just signed the most comprehensive measure in the country to combat opioid addiction. While there are many people who need to be thanked, I'm going to start with those who represent the voices that my wife Lauren and I heard over and over again on the campaign trail, some of which are here today. John and Stephanie Green of Easton, who told me on the campaign trail about their son Evan, who became addicted to opioids. He ultimately turned to heroin, and after years of hell, as his mother put it to me, he tragically overdosed. Janice McGrory of Harwich, who lost her beautiful daughter Liz at the age of 23. Her family was then brave enough to come forward and star in one of our public awareness announcements, which was seen by thousands of people here in the Commonwealth. And the students at North Shore Recovery High School, who wrote me letters in which they shared heartbreaking stories of addiction and loss, and how that school has served as an incredible support system for them. In my inaugural address, I made a commitment not only as your governor, but as a father, to tackle this issue head on with the legislature, the Attorney General, the mayors, and others, for the sake of the families who've been scarred and traumatized at the hands of this deadly, merciless epidemic. This legislation contains many of the key provisions that we outlined in our bill that we released last October. It places a limit on first-time prescriptions, 7 days for adults, and a 7-day limit on every opiate prescribed for minors, unless certain exceptions apply. This is the first law in the nation to limit an opioid prescription, and I hope other states consider pursuing something similar. Ridding our communities of substance misuse and addiction will take more than one bill, one budget, or one program. It's going to require constant, aggressive teamwork from Beacon Hill to our communities. Our administration will continue implementing recommendations from our working group and finding new ways to pursue treatment, recovery, and education for all. But that being said, it is pretty powerful to stand here with such a dynamic and bipartisan group of leaders who have different job titles and different stories to sign a bill that will move us forward in this fight.
This problem used to be seen as a crime. It's now understood to be a disease that's experienced by people in every corner of the Commonwealth, no matter the color of their skin, their background, their economic circumstances. And what used to be seen as something limited to certain neighborhoods in the community and in the Commonwealth, it is now understood to be what it has always been, a disease, a situation that grows out of hopelessness, out of pain, out of a feeling that there is no hope and no reason to look at the brighter side of life and to self-medicate to escape from the pain and the suffering and the hopelessness that the individual is experiencing.
Combating the opioid crisis in Massachusetts and supporting those struggling with addiction requires a comprehensive and multifaceted approach. We have created workable solutions by consensus building. We have created legislation that complements our budget investments, ultimately setting a foundation for continuous improvement. I'm heartened that this legislation builds off of last year's landmark substance addiction law, which I've heard firsthand has saved lives, and that's an incredibly powerful thing. You have my word that the House will continue this fight. We will stand side by side with our neighbors and friends, daughters, mothers, fathers, and sons as we pave the way for the recovery of thousands of our loved ones, and in fact, a path for our wounded Commonwealth.
As I was out over the last few years on the campaign, it became very clear and apparent to me that this had to be our priority. This was the priority because this was the single greatest issue facing our Commonwealth, devastating families, ruining lives, ruining communities. And I'm really grateful that today has happened. I commend Governor Baker, Secretary Sutters, and the team for their leadership, particularly over the last year, in taking up the mantle, making this their top priority. I commend Speaker DeLeo, Senate President Rosenberg, their teams, the conferees. We have not seen and we will not see a more comprehensive, a more thoughtful, a more game-changing piece of legislation in this entire country. And it is a credit to all of the folks who worked so hard with such urgency, with such thoughtfulness, deliberation, and care to get this done. And I'd just like to give them a round of applause for all that they've accomplished. To those who have lost loved ones, to those who have loved ones who are hurting, who are struggling, who are in pain, I recognize, we all recognize that this legislation will not bring your loved ones back. But I want you to know, and I hope that you find some measure in comfort knowing that today there is legislation that is going to change the course for other families, for other individuals in the state.
And one of my first conversations with the governor was about addiction and recovery. And we spoke about how do we battle this issue. Because whether it's Dorchester or Swampscott or Western Mass or wherever it is in Massachusetts, it doesn't matter. It goes back to being a family disease. And when the governor said, I'm putting together these very aggressive pieces in my bill, I said, I love them all. And even some of my own team said, well, be careful. How are you going to institute that? I'm like, I don't care. Because it's about making a step forward. Because there's no roadmap to recovery. There's no roadmap to recovery. There's no roadmap for a family to recovery. It's not like when you're sick and you go in the hospital, you're prescribed, and there's a roadmap to a cure, whatever, if you have a disease. There's no roadmap here. Another step. If this bill helps one family and one addict, it's done its job.
I stand here representing the thousands of grieving mothers who have lost their children to overdoses, to this disease. It breaks my heart to think that every day, 4 kids are dying in the state of Massachusetts. It breaks my heart. The state of Mass is taking a stand and is taking action. The passing of this bill gives me great hope. It is a start.
You could call it Liz's Act. You call it Nathan's Act. Any person who's lost a loved member, a loved one, it is their act because it is in their memories and their honor that allows us to step forward. So the STEP Act is a key step in the right direction in providing treatment and prevention. It is a key step in understanding addictions as an illness and not a lack of willpower. It is a key step in offering a lifeline to individuals with addictions and their families. It enlists all communities in the fight, not just law enforcement and our courts, but our medical and dental communities, our schools, our youth and families, and treatment providers, and does not judge, but offers hope to individuals with the disease of addiction and their loved ones.